Is that you?
What?
Is that you? That beep? I either started the recording or set the auto destruct sequence. Today we're starting chapter 14, Blood. Now, if you remember from last semester, blood is a connective tissue. It's pretty much found throughout the body. And in a lot of ways, it's considered by many to be probably the most important tissue because literally, without blood, there is no life. And it's unique because the extracellular matrix of blood is liquid. In all other cases, the ECM is a solid, but not here. The blood consists of two types of components. The first component is about 45% of the blood. And it's called the formed elements. Formed elements. Red blood cells, white blood cells, and what we call platelets. Almost all of that 45% is red blood cells. And if it makes it easier for you all, capital R, capital B, capital C is a convention for abbreviating red blood cell. Capital W, capital B, capital C, white blood cell. If you use that on a test, that's fine. The platelets and white blood cells together generally make up less than 1%. The remaining 55% of the blood is a liquid. And the proper term for that liquid is plasma. Now, I want you to know the difference between plasma and serum. Come on in.
Hi, guys.
How'd you?
Come on in.
Hello. We don't want to take up a lot of your class time. My name's Jessica Burton. I'm the College Navigator Coordinator for SCC, so I cover the Somerset, Laurel, McCurry, and Russell Center. So what we do is just help to create success plans for you to make sure that you're healed as a whole person. So, because there's a life outside of SEC and we recognize that, so we want to make sure that you're supported academically and non-academically. We can connect you to internal and external resources to help you to navigate your experience here at SEC because we want you to be successful. I also like to just tell this interesting story. I think it's a good way to think about life sometimes. So there's 3 frogs, and these 3 frogs are jumping out of this hole, and there's these frogs all around them saying, "You're never going to make it, you're not going to So these 3 frogs continue to jump. Well, eventually they get tired, and the first frog dies because it just doesn't want to hear the haters anymore. So then you have the other 2 frogs, and they're jumping, and they're trying to get out of this hole. But everyone around them is saying, you're not going to make it, you're not going to amount to anything, you're not going to be successful. So that second frog, it finally gets tired and it gives up and it dies. So now the 3rd frog is in there alone, and it's jumping, and it finally gets out. And when it gets to the top, the other frogs ask, well, how did you make it? And the frog says, I'm deaf. So don't listen to your haters. Keep focused on your academic success and know that you are supported here at SEC. You have your expert here, and you've already paid for him and you've already paid for us. So anytime that the expert would like for you to reach out to us, we would really enjoy that. Sheena is the college navigator here for the McCurry campus. I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sheena King. I'm located over here. If I'm not there, I'm probably in Russell County. You can call me and get me either way. But, like she said, here to help with kind of anything and everything. We get it. Life happens. I understand, right? Way too much. How many of you know about Starfish? Anyone? Oh, okay, good. So Starfish is a program where instructors can raise flags for like different types of concerns, whether it's bad attendance or danger of failing, and that just sends it to us, and then we reach out and say, hey, what can we do to help you? Because we want you to be successful. So if you receive a call or email from myself or Riley Hill, get back in touch with us, because like I said, we're just kind of reaching out, seeing what we can do to help you guys the most.
And you guys can use Starfish for referrals if you need
Yes.
to do a referral for academic, for financial aid. If you wanted to reach out to me or to your instructor, if you want to speak to someone in the transfer center, instructors also put kudos in there, which is just like congratulations, good job. So I'll have her leave some information on Starfish. That way you guys are all familiar. So if you start seeing those emails from her, you don't freak out.
Yeah, not a bad thing, promise.
My name is Ralph Easton. I'm actually an AmeriCorps worker, but I work here as like a tutor and just sort of an administrative support person. Most of what I do tutoring-wise is math, physics, and chemistry. So specifically those subjects, if you need help with those, I can do that totally by myself. But if you need help with something like this course or another biology course, something where I don't have the expertise, we can get you in touch with tutors from the other campuses. You can do like remote sessions with them if you don't want to have to drive to, say, Somerset just to have a tutoring session. The library resources that we have here, there's not a lot, but if you do have a book down here that you'd like to check out, I can do that. And if there's a book that's available at another campus, I can arrange to get it here for you to check out if you'd like. You can find where to schedule a session for tutoring on SEC's website. If you'd like to see where it is, you can stop by and I can show you. But yeah, you can set up on there whether you want it to be an in-person one where you can come down here or a virtual one where I can send you a link to a Microsoft Teams meeting.
It's free. Tutoring services are free.
Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
The other thing is here, since usually it's not super busy, it's not a big deal if you just drop in and walk in if you want to get some help with something. So don't feel right now that you have to make an appointment, but if it ever gets to the point that it's like super busy, I may ask people to do that as a preference. But for now, it's pretty laid back and I have a lot of time to help. So
Then Melissa Cottle, she couldn't make it, but she's our connector. She's at the Somerset campus. So if you need help with like any health insurance, I'm gonna leave some cards on her behalf. So if you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm gonna leave a couple of my cards as well. I always like to tell students, come find us when you need us. We like to see your A papers, but we like to see those C papers too. So
They're a pretty good crew.
good,
Awesome.
good.
I had them last semester.
Good. And then, of course, your expert at hand. He's going to love to hear that from here on out. Refer to him as the expert.
And just to verify, y'all are located in the Learning Commons, right?
Yes.
I'm there every day.
Yes.
And which days are?
I'm typically here Monday, Tuesday, and Friday. Or excuse me, Monday, Thursday, Friday. Next week's a little different. You guys, on Tuesday, if you're free, we are having a study success kickoff, New Year, New You event. We're working on the Smarter Measures assessment, which shows like your best learning style, your competency with technology, life factors, everything. It helps with that success plan. Got some great study tips for you. So if you guys have time, swing by and see me.
Keep in mind, that's things that can help you as you move on throughout your career, not just with this class.
Yes.
Yes. And so we'll just leave some cards here, and like I said, come find us when you need us. We also have a web page, so you can just type in SEC College Navigator, and it'll pull us up, and you can schedule an appointment with us.
And when you said you're available for a lot of different things, may I share an example? I had one student who did not know how to set up a checking account. So she went to her navigator, and her navigator walked her through all the steps. And I remember her sending me an email saying, I got it. But she had never had an opportunity. And if you don't know something, it's just like I told you all about asking questions in here. They can help you probably a lot more than I can. So don't ever hesitate to make use of that resource.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, because if y'all knew it all, you'd be in his seat, right? We're here to learn, so it's all good.
It's a good idea for any kind of question that you have. If you ever feel any bit of discomfort or uneasiness about something, it's a lot easier to just ask someone than to like worry about it.
And listen, I'm like pretty laid back. I'm here to help you guys to the best of my ability. That's what we're gonna do. We'll make it work. If I can't do it, we're gonna find the person that can. So don't worry.
And my office is at the Somerset office at the Learning Commons there, but I can meet you virtually or over the phone, just whatever works if Sheena's unavailable. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I
If you
appreciate
guys
you
need
coming in.
anything at all, reach out to me because we have C-Canvas. We also have food banks, and I could also help with like any type of medical or SNAP. So if you think of anything, because you're not thinking of it now, reach out to me later. Okay. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
letting
Let
us
these
talk.
here, you guys help yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
so very much. You guys have a good day.
You too.
As well. Think of all the places I've been. I've never been anywhere that had a program as helpful as that Navigators program. And I mean, whatever you need, they care. That's why they're here. So, where were we?
55% of the liquid in the ECM is plasma.
Plasma. Did I talk about plasma versus serum?
No.
Okay. Plasma and serum are very similar, but they are not the same thing. Plasma is everything except the formed elements. Serum, the blood is allowed to clot before the liquid is removed. Now we're going to see that the platelets play a role in clotting. A significant role, in fact. But there are a lot of what we call clotting factors that are dissolved in the plasma. Those are not present in serum. To get plasma, what you do is you take a sample of blood. You'll typically treat it with anticoagulants. Then you put it into a centrifuge. Does everybody know what a centrifuge is? It just spins.
Thingy.
Yeah, the spinning thingy. It spins at a very, very, very high rate of speed. And what happens, the heavier materials are going to migrate towards the bottom of the test tube. And in essence, you're going to see three bands or three groups. The bottom is going to be very red. That is the red blood cells. They are the densest. Then you're going to see a very narrow layer right here in the middle. The name for this is the Buffy layer, Buffy, because the color is considered to be buff, Buff. Real technical term, I know. It's kind of a darkish tan. That layer has the white blood cells and the platelets. The remaining portion is going to be a straw-colored liquid. That is the plasma. To prepare serum, you draw it into the sample tube and you allow it to clot. Then you centrifuge it. You'll have two layers. You'll have a solid clot down here, and then you'll have a liquid fraction that's very similar in color to plasma. But it lacks all of those dissolved proteins and factors that are involved in the clotting process. Everybody clear on that? And I'm not telling you this to be pedantic, because each of these has different medical applications. There are times when you don't want the clotting factors present. There are times when you do want the clotting factors present. And which you need depends on which preparation you'll use. Okay? The average human male has between 5 to 6 liters of blood. The average human female has between 4 and 5 liters of blood. You may hear of people bleeding to death. The proper term for that is hypovolemic shock. Hypovolemic shock. Let me make sure I'm getting that right. It doesn't mean that you are lacking enough blood to carry nutrients and oxygen. Most people don't realize that. What it means is you have lost so much volume that essentially the circulatory system collapses. Has anybody here ever seen what happens when you turn the water off and you got a hose? The stream coming out very quickly goes down, doesn't it? The hose goes limp. Whenever you have hypovolemic shock, the exact same thing is happening to the blood in your arteries and veins. What this means very often, first aid for someone who's bled a lot is simply an IV of saline. I had a friend who was a combat medic. He said in times of war when he went on patrol, he would just always stick a couple of bags of saline in. Had the big pockets on his uniform, he would just stick them in there. And I said, somebody got shot, what's the first thing you do? He said, put a pressor bandage on it. Get the bleeding stopped, under control. He said, second thing, hook that IV up with that saline. Because it keeps the blood volume up, keeps the liquid fraction up. Now you're going to have a lower percentage of red blood cells and white blood cells, right? But you're still keeping the circulatory system functional. So if you're ever watching some of these medical shows, what's the one where everybody's always sleeping with everybody? That one. They're always checking the blood pressure of the people who come in, and they always worry about the blood pressure getting low. When they say somebody's bleeding out, literally what's happening, they're losing so much liquid volume, the circulatory system just can't keep up. The blood pressure drops precipitously, the heart rate goes way up because the heart is just trying everything it can to keep that stuff pumping. There's just not enough liquid in there. Does that help everybody? That might also be a case where if you have somebody that's lost a significant volume of blood, but they're in otherwise good health, they may just inject them with plasma rather than whole blood. Whole blood means you've got the formed elements of the plasma, everything. It does not have the longest shelf life. Plasma, on the other hand, to the best of my understanding, can actually be frozen. So again, you're more likely to have plasma on hand than whole blood necessarily. Any questions on that? Now, blood is slightly basic, slightly alkaline. It has a pH of about 7.4. It may be higher, it may be lower, but generally it is going to maintain right about 7.4. And when I say a little above, I do mean a little. 7.45 is kind of considered the high range, 7.35 is considered the low range. You're not even going to move a full tenth of a point off that mark. If you do, you start to get difficulties. Ketoacidosis, we talked about diabetes. The reason the blood maintains this, it has a built-in buffering capacity. A built-in buffering capacity. So if you were to put a small quantity of acid directly into the bloodstream, pH would do this, and then this. Dip, and go right back up. What are some of the things that are found in plasma? Number one, proteins. Proteins. These will generally be albumins, ALBUMINS, globulins, those help maintain the osmotic pressure. They help dissolve some things in the blood that may not otherwise be soluble. Things like cholesterol or steroids, fats. Some of those globulins, the albumins are more the ones that help in solubility. The globulins are often involved in an immune response. Back when COVID was really raging, one of the things they would do sometimes is give the plasma from people who had suffered from it and recovered to people who were infected and not responding, because that plasma from the donor contained gamma globulins that would bind the virus in the circulatory system. You've also got fibrinogen. That's a protein that's very involved in clotting. So that's something you would not find in serum. You'll have some sugar. Fats. I think I already mentioned that, didn't I? Hormones. On average, you probably got about 8% solids, 92% water in plasma. You have to be careful when giving someone plasma or serum, because it does contain the immune proteins. It contains the immunoglobulins. So Tuesday we found out our blood types, right? Do y'all know how that works? I'm gonna pick on Morgan since you sit here. Let's pretend you're type A. That would mean the red blood cells in her blood have surface proteins called antigens, A-N-T-I-G-E-N-S. She would have the A antigen. Not if I pick on you, Annalise. Let's say Annalise has got type B blood. hers would have the B antigens. I'm just illustrating, sticking up different ways, okay? Kylie here has AB blood, so she has both antigens. Morgan's blood recognizes type A as belonging, doesn't it? If we put some of Annalise's blood into Morgan, it's going to see those B antigens, isn't it? It's going to say those are foreign. What's going to happen? Those immunoglobulins circulating in your blood are going to bind those B blood cells and cause a clot to form. Everybody see that? Let's say Josh over here has got B blood. Could he donate to Annalise? Your B and your B. Could? Yeah. Because her immunoglobulins would see the B antigen and say it belonged. If we took Morgan's blood and put it in Annalise, your blood would react to hers the same way. Everybody see that? Now, what would happen if we took some of Morgan's blood and put it into Kylie, who's type AB? What do you think, Abby? Huh? Huh?
Would it work?
It would also clot. Because, oh wait, it wouldn't. Because if you took either of their blood and put it into Kylie, Kylie's blood sees the A antigens from her blood, but since your own blood has both of those, it's okay. You have the B antigens. Yours have B as well as A, so it's okay. You would be the universal recipient. Type AB can receive blood from anyone. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
What about when like the negatives and the positives come into play?
Don't worry about that right now. I know you're a mother. They're still in high school. We don't need to expose them to all this stuff yet. At least until later in the lecture. Y'all know what my blood type is because I've told you. I'm type O. What antigens do my blood have?
Oh, none.
You're the universal.
They don't have any antigens at all. My red blood cells are stealth mode. And since you've already given out the secret, Morgan could take my blood, Annalise could take my blood, Kylie could take my blood, Josh could take it. Anybody at this table can take my blood and put it in their system and be okay. Your immune system cannot even tell that there are foreign cells present. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? Whose blood can I take?
Oh.
O only. Because I make anti-A, I make anti-B. So we inject either of them, I'm going to get it, right? We inject me some of Kylie's blood, I get the double whammy. So what does this mean for me as a blood donor? It means those vampires over at the Red Cross call me every 56 days. You ready to donate again? Those guys are worse than Dracula. And I mean that. But I do try because there might be another type O donor out there who needs some, and someday I might need it. So hopefully the information we get about blood type will help you all make some decisions about whether you want to donate, how much you want to donate, and what. Does that sound good? And since somebody brought it up, there is something called an RH factor, capital R, little h. The RH factor is basically presence or absence of a specific antigen, the RH antigen. And we don't need to get into details of what it is. So, most people have it. Somebody like me, I'm O neg. That means I don't have any antigens at all. I don't even have the dang plus antigen, the Rh antigen. So when I say my blood is stealth, I mean it is stealth. You can put it in anybody. It doesn't really work as a factor in transfusions. Where it really becomes a concern is if you are a woman
Right.
who's pregnant for the second or more times. So, I'll pick on you since you have kids. Let's say that Nikki is Rh positive. Her husband is Rh negative. Now she's heterozygous at this locus, which means she has a 50% chance of passing on the positive, a 50% chance of passing on the negative. Does everybody see how that works? So the first child she has, she passes on the negative allele. Her husband passes on the negative allele. Her firstborn child is therefore going to have a negative blood type. Does everybody see that? You and your child, it's your son, right? Your first one. Her and her son shared nutrients and things through the placenta, didn't you? Is her immune system being exposed continually to negative blood? See where this is going? So now she's making antibodies against that blood. Second child comes along, just a daughter.
Yep.
Her daughter is also Rh negative. She's already primed her immune system against her daughter's blood. During the birth process, which is fairly a lot of blood contact involved, that can actually damage the fetus. Everybody see how that goes? I think they do this as standard now. There's a drug called Rhogam, R-H-O-G-A-M, and I believe they give that as an injection standard at every birth. Is that right?
No, like, I have family members that are Rh negative, and because they know that, they have to continually go back to the doctor. It's like every 6 weeks, and they have to get like a Rhogam shot because
Really?
yeah, their body will reject the baby and that's
Well,
scary.
only during pregnancy.
During pregnancy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
And thanks for letting me pick on you. I did that because you asked a question, but I also know you're a mother. These are just things that if you're considering children someday, you do need to consider. Not just if you're a female, but guys, if you're going to have children someday, you want to talk with your partner, make sure you know what her blood type is and what yours are, so you have an idea whether or not this is going to be a concern during the pregnancy and birth process. It's, like I said, it's not a major deal nowadays, but it is something that they do test for and you have to keep it up on. Thanks for sharing that. Is everybody okay with that? I'm still going. All right, where were we? Talk about pH.
The blood having a pH of about 7.4 variables, yes.
Okay. All right. Blood is thicker than water. And that's not just a cliche. By that, I mean whole blood has a viscosity about 3 to 4 times that of water. Now you'll know higher viscosity just means a thicker liquid, it pours slower. We've all put syrup on our pancakes. We've had honey. You know what I'm talking about. So blood is a little bit heavier than water. It is thicker. The main reason for that are the red blood cells. The red blood cells, technical name for these, erythrocytes. Erythrocytes. They're considered to be red, even though they're more of a rust color, because they contain a protein called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin. At the core is what we call a heme group. A heme group. H-E-M-E. And that just means you've got an atom of the element iron at the center. And as you all probably know, iron has a pretty good affinity for binding with oxygen, doesn't it? You don't believe me? Set an iron bar or something outside for about a week or two, go out and see what's going to be on it. It's going to be rust, isn't it? Iron oxide. And now you see why your blood has the color it does. Red blood cells have a shelf life of about 90 to 120 days, 3 or 4 months. Every single day, damaged, worn out red blood cells get removed from the circulatory system via the spleen. The spleen. The spleen is a smallish organ sitting about right here on the body. It has, I guess, what you could call a ready reserve of red blood cells. Remember how we talked about glycogen in the liver? You've got a ready reserve of quick energy, so if you skip a meal, you can still keep your blood sugar constant. We've all had a cut, haven't we? You lose some blood. Number of red blood cells is going to do this. Spleen, going to release a few from the reserve, get it back up to normal. Generally, if you do a blood donation, they'll take about 470 milliliters. 470 milliliters. That's about 8% of your blood. When you get up from the donation, just if you were to stand straight up, you might feel a little lightheaded or dizzy. Might even faint just a little, once rare moon. That's normal. You just basically lost 8% of your blood, 8% of your oxygen, right? There's not really going to be any long-term health effects from that. If you lose more than 20%, you're going to start to see some effects. one thing they look for whenever you have a victim that's found unconscious or somebody who's been wounded and brought in is something called cyanosis. Cyanosis. C-Y-A-N-O-S-I-S. Cyanosis. And what that is, you look at the beds of the fingernails. You look at the lips. They turn blue. I've never really understood that because all they do is kind of get a deeper shade of purple. It's not blue. You may show this if you're having extreme cold, because what's happening, the extremities, if you are in a very, very cold situation, the blood vessels in the extremities constrict and reduce blood flow through them. That means they reduce oxygen flow. The reason for that, what's more important, keeping your fingers supplied with blood or keeping your internal organs supplied with blood? I think that's kind of obvious. And that's how people get frostbite. If you get that vasoconstriction in the extremities for an extended period of time, the tissue actually dies. If you look at a frostbite survivor, they'll very often have black fingertips, maybe a black nose, black toe tips. What's happened is that vasoconstriction has gotten so extreme, the tissues got starved of oxygen. They've died, and they're literally beginning to rot. You may hear that called gangrene, G-A-N-G-R-E-N-E, gangrene. Necrosis is the technical term, necrosis. There are other things that can cause that: bacterial infection, septic shock. If you get necrosis in the extremities from sepsis or septic shock, chances are it's probably going to be lethal. It's not a very common thing. You have to catch somebody, they had to have had it long enough to get tissue damage, but not so long that it's damaged their internal organs and they die. I've had septic shock. That's what flatlined me when I had my infection. But since the bacteria were in the core of my body, I didn't have any dangers. I did have one symptom of it. I was only remembered this yesterday when I was talking with a student who was asking what it was like. I had started to get some numbness from lack of blood in my fingertips. We've all sat on our arm wrong or our leg slept on it. You get your limb, quote, goes to sleep, and you know how it feels when it comes back. I had a little bit of that, but it was nothing where it would have rang any alarm bells. So, obviously, the red blood cells are the most important component of blood. Their purpose is what? Who can tell me?
Purpose of red blood cells?
Yep,
Carry the oxygen.
carry oxygen. And CO2. While the blood is important in all those other components we mentioned, what really determines whether you live or die is the oxygen and CO2 carried to and from the cells by the blood, specifically the red blood cells. That's why they make up such a major component of the formed components. A red blood a red blood cell is shaped kind of like a flattened disc. And that's due to the hemoglobin. Has anybody in here heard of sickle cell anemia? Someone who suffers from this has a mutated gene that does not produce normal hemoglobin. And since it doesn't produce a normal shaped hemoglobin, that means three things. Number one, it's not going to be as efficient at transporting oxygen. That's why we call it anemia. Number two, the microbes that cause malaria have a tougher time infecting those blood cells. So if you have only one allele for the mutated form, you don't suffer the anemia and you're somewhat resistant to malaria. But if you're homozygous, meaning both alleles are the mutant form, this is number three, your red blood cells are going to end up being shaped like a sickle, or a crescent moon might be a better example. Y'all saw the blood on Tuesday. You saw how many red blood cells there were, didn't you? There's a lot of them. They're always bumping into each other, colliding, bouncing. That round shape means they bounce right off each other. What's going to happen if they're sickle shaped?
Stab each other. Stick together.
Stick together. If you get enough of them stick together, they can block a blood vessel. It's not a clot in the traditional sense, it's just more of a blockage. But depending on the size and location of the block, it can mean anything from a very, very sharp pain in a muscle to a critical organ being starved of blood. And if it's a critical organ starved of blood, that could have some significant long-term health concerns. It's not something that's seen often here in the United States. It's primarily in the African American community. Because historically, though, they originated in equatorial Africa where malaria is endemic. I'm not saying it's an insignificant problem, but in that community it can be. Let's pause it right there and take a 10-minute break.